Stand in the corner, Alina. Your miserable face ruins the energy of your brother's signing. My mother's fingers dug into my arm as she shoved me away from the polished boardroom table. Her nails were perfectly manicured, pale pink, soft-looking. They still hurt. Just pour the water properly, she hissed under her breath. Servitude is all you are good at. Do not let your bad luck haunt this family's money. I did not scream. I did not argue. I did not defend myself. I simply walked to the side station, picked up the glass water pitcher slick with condensation, and glanced at the watch hidden beneath the cuff of my plain black blazer. 4 minutes. The mysterious investor. They were all terrified of would arrive in 4 minutes. And they had no idea she was already standing in the room. From my position near the wall, I had the perfect view of the family dynamic that had defined my entire life. To my father, Arthur Vance, children were never children. We were financial instruments, lines on a balance sheet, assets, liabilities, write-offs. My brother Julian was the growth stock, high risk, high reward, volatile, reckless, constantly losing value, yet somehow still the favorite holding in my father's emotional portfolio. Money flowed toward him like gravity. Private tutors when he failed math. A brand new sedan when he wrapped his first car around a lamppost while drunk at 19. Seed capital for a restaurant that collapsed in 6 months because he didn't believe in working weekends. Each failure was reframed as vision. Each bailout was called a bridge loan. My father poured our family's stability into the black hole of Julian's ego, convinced that one day the payoff would justify decades of losses. And me. I was the sunk cost. The safe, boring bond he regretted ever buying. When I got into college, my father said the liquidity wasn't there. I worked 3 jobs, night shifts at a pharmacy, morning lectures half awake, smelling like disinfectant and exhaustion. I graduated with honors, 0 debt, and 0 family support. When I landed my first job in risk assessment, my father didn't congratulate me. He asked why I hadn't chosen a commission-based sales role like Julian. To him, steady income was for servants. Real winners gambled. That gambling addiction had brought us all into this cold glass office today. Julian had found another opportunity. He always found opportunities that required someone else's money. This time it was a buy-in to an elite investment partnership. The fee, $150,000. Julian didn't have it. He hadn't had real money in years. But he had convinced Arthur this was the one, the golden ticket, the deal that would validate decades of blind faith and financial stupidity. I watched my father adjust his tie, hands trembling slightly. He was terrified, but arrogance was his favorite mask. You should be taking notes, Alina, he muttered without looking at me. Julian is about to secure this family's legacy while you worry about rent. He thinks big. That's the difference. He gestured around the expensive office space. Julian is an asset. Investing in you for 30 years was the biggest loss of my life. You are a sunk cost. At least try to be useful today. Watch how real players move. A sunk cost. Money already spent. Impossible to recover. Rational investors ignore sunk costs when making future decisions. But my father had never been rational. He was addicted. He had spent so much on Julian that stopping now would mean admitting his life strategy had been a failure. So instead, he was prepared to sign away the only real asset he had left, his fully paid-off house, to fund one more fantasy. He didn't know the balance sheet had already changed. I wasn't the liability anymore. I was the auditor. And today, I was closing the books. To my family, I was the invisible daughter who refilled glasses and kept quiet. Here's the truth I'd been hiding for 5 years. I don't work in administration. I don't file paperwork. I'm a distressed debt investor. When companies fail, when they bleed cash, when their assets turn toxic, and everyone else runs away, I move in. I buy bad debt for pennies on the dollar. Then I either restructure the company or dismantle it piece by piece. Some people call that cruel. In my world, we call it efficient. 2 weeks ago, my algorithms flagged a small but aggressive firm, Blackwood Partners. They were recruiting new partners for a $150,000 buy-in. On the surface, they looked exclusive. Underneath, they were desperate. Cash flow negative, regulatory pressure mounting. Classic early-stage Ponzi structure that needed fresh capital to survive another quarter. Julian had been bragging about Blackwood for months, said they headhunted him, said they recognized his genius. They hadn't recognized genius. They had recognized a mark. A desperate man with a wealthy-looking father and no financial literacy. When I realized Julian was walking straight into a financial slaughterhouse, I almost warned them. I almost called Arthur. Then I remembered every birthday dinner where I was seated at the kids' table. Every comment about my cheap clothes. Every time Julian laughed at my promotions and asked if I was finally allowed to use the color printer at work. So I didn't warn them. I bought the slaughterhouse. Through a shell company, I purchased controlling debt in Blackwood Partners 48 hours ago. That gave me operational control. I controlled the board. I controlled compliance. And I controlled the man walking through that door in 3 minutes. Mr. Sterling wasn't an outside auditor. He was my head of security and forensic compliance. And he was very good at destroying liars. Julian sat at the table sweating through his designer shirt, tapping nervously on his leather briefcase. I knew exactly what was inside. Not $150,000. A forged bank statement. He had opened a real PDF, edited the balance, added 3 zeros, and printed it on expensive paper, believing texture equals truth. The door opened. Sterling walked in like a verdict. Tall, impeccable charcoal suit, expression calm in the way surgeons are calm before cutting. He walked past me without a glance, treating me exactly as my family did. Invisible. Perfect. He shook Julian's hand. Mr. Julian, I've heard about your ambition. Julian stood too fast, almost knocking his chair over. It's an honor. My father beamed. We're ready to move forward. Sterling sat. Excitement is good, he said evenly. Solvency is better. I assume you have proof of liquidity. My mother snapped her fingers at me. Elena, water, and try not to spill this time. I stepped forward, poured with steady hands, silent as air. As I filled Julian's glass, I heard him whisper, I fixed the numbers. It looks perfect. Arthur whispered back, they can't tell. It's just a PDF. I returned to the wall. They thought my silence meant weakness. They didn't know it was discipline. Julian slid a cream envelope across the table. Certified statements, $150,000 liquid. Sterling didn't touch it. That was my cue. I stepped forward, eyes lowered. I'm so sorry, I said softly. Our document scanner is down. Compliance requires direct digital verification for blockchain logging. Could you email the PDF directly from your banking app? We'll display it on the main screen. Julian froze. Sterling checked his watch. We have 10 minutes, otherwise the seat goes to another partner. Panic overrode logic. Julian opened his laptop. Typed fast. Attach the forged file. Hit send. My phone vibrated in my pocket. Evidence delivered voluntarily. Federal wire fraud, committed in front of witnesses, transmitted across state lines. I didn't smile. Predators don't celebrate during the hunt. Sterling nodded at his tablet. Liquidity noted. However, to secure the seat before market open, we require temporary collateral. He slid a blue legal document toward my father. A deed of trust on your primary residence, released once funds clear tomorrow. Silence fell. My father stared at the paper like it was a snake. This is standard, he asked weakly. If you're uncomfortable, Sterling said calmly, we can move to the next candidate. Julian leaned in urgently. Dad, it's 24 hours. Don't ruin this. My father hesitated. Then Julian whispered, "When I'm partner, I'll buy you that Boca Raton condo. Golf course view." Greed drowned fear. He signed. The house became collateral. The trap locked. Julian leaned back smugly. "When I upgrade security at the new estate, maybe I'll hire you, Alina." My mother laughed. "With a better outfit, maybe." I set the picture down, picked up my phone, walked to the head of the table. "Actually," I said calmly, connecting my phone to the screen, "you won't be hearing anyone." The monitor lit up. Document A, ownership structure of Blackwood Partners. My father read the name out loud. Alina Vance. "I own the firm," I said. "Mr. Sterling works for me." Color drained from Julian's face. Document B, real-time bank balance. $4,126.83. Document C, the file you emailed. Metadata shows it was edited 1 hour ago. Font layering mismatch, it's a forgery. I looked him in the eyes. "You just committed federal wire fraud." My father dropped the pen. Julian whispered, "It was temporary." "You tried to leverage Dad's house to cover a lie," I said. I placed 2 documents on the table. Option 1, I report this. Prison, asset seizure, public record. Option 2, you sign a deed in lieu of foreclosure. The house transfers to my company. I don't report the fraud. "You can't do this," my mother screamed. "You already lost the house," I replied. "I'm just choosing who keeps it." For the first time in his life, my father looked at me and saw power. "Give me the pen," he said hoarsely. He signed. I closed the folder. "Congratulations," I said quietly. "Your bad luck now owns the property." I turned to leave. Behind me, their golden child began to crack, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel small. I felt settled, balanced, accounts finally reconciled. The silence behind me fractured the moment the office door clicked shut. At first it was just breathing, sharp, uneven, animal. Then came the voices. "What did you sign?" My mother's voice cracked, the polished elegance gone, replaced with something raw and afraid. Arthur didn't answer. Julian did. "You signed the house away." His chair screeched violently against the floor. "Dad, tell me you didn't just hand her everything." I didn't turn around, but I could picture it perfectly. My father staring at the document like it had bitten him. My mother clutching her designer handbag like it might float if the room flooded. Julian packing, hands in his hair, rage mixing with panic. I paused outside the glass wall, still within view, still close enough to hear. This part mattered. Consequences should be witnessed. Arthur finally spoke, voice hollow. "You said the money was there." "It will be," Julian shouted. "I just needed time." "You forged a federal document," Arthur roared back, decades of denial cracking in seconds. "In front of witnesses." My mother rounded on him. "You told us this was guaranteed. You said they wanted you." "They did," Julian snapped. "She tricked us." I stepped back into the doorway. "No," I said calmly. "I gave you exactly what you've given me my entire life." They all turned. "A choice," I continued, "based on information, risk versus consequence." Julian pointed at me, shaking. "You set me up." "You set yourself up the moment you decided fraud was easier than work." Arthur's voice trembled. "You would really send your own brother to prison." I held his gaze. "You were ready to let me drown in debt at 18 because liquidity was tight. Family stopped being a shield in this house a long time ago. You made that rule. I just learned to play by it." My mother's tone shifted, desperate now. "We can fix this. We'll give the house back once his partnership money clears." "There is no partnership," I said. "Blackwood Partners is under investigation. I own the debt. I own the board. That firm shuts down next quarter. Your golden ticket was a sinking ship." Julian staggered back into his chair like his bones gave out. Arthur looked older, smaller. "So what now?" "Now," I said, "we do this the clean way." I walked back to the table, and laid out one more folder. Inside are occupancy terms. You can remain in the house as tenants. I cover property tax and insurance. You pay below market rent, on time, every month. Miss 2 payments, eviction proceeds. My mother stared at me like I had spoken another language. You expect us to pay you? Yes. Julian let out a hysterical laugh. This is revenge. No, I said softly. This is risk management. I looked directly at my father. You always said money should work harder than people. That emotions ruin decision-making. That weak investments must be cut. I tapped the folder. I finally listened. His shoulders slumped because he recognized his own philosophy staring back at him. Colder, sharper, smarter. Julian's voice turned venomous. You think you won? You're alone, you have no family. I met his eyes without blinking. I built a life without one. That stopped being a threat years ago. My phone buzzed. A message from Sterling. Leon recorded. Transfer confirmed. Legal ownership complete. I showed the screen to my father. It's done. No drama, no shouting, no courtroom speech. Just paperwork. That's how real power moves. I picked up my bag. At the door, my mother's voice came small and trembling. Alina, please, we didn't mean. I paused, but I didn't turn. I know, I said quietly. That was the problem. I walked down the hallway, heels steady against marble, each step lighter than the last. Behind me, the empire my father built on ego and denial collapsed into arguments, blame, and fear. Ahead of me, the elevator doors opened with a soft chime. Clean, quiet, predictable. Like a balanced ledger. As the doors slid shut, my reflection looked back at me, not the invisible girl from the corner, but the woman who learned the rules of a broken system. And then bought the system. The ground floor arrived. Sunlight poured through the lobby windows as I stepped outside, breathing in air that felt different, not sweeter, just earned. My phone rang. Sterling. It's handled, he said. I know. Do you want me to flag the wire fraud anyway? I looked up at the sky for a long moment. Then I said, no, not unless they give me a reason. Mercy, like leverage, is most powerful when it's conditional. I ended the call and walked toward my car, the city noise rising around me. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the afterthought. I wasn't the liability. I wasn't the sunk cost. I was the controlling interest. And the books were finally closed. 3 months later, the first rent payment arrived exactly on time. Arthur transferred it himself. No note, no message, just a clean digital transaction with a reference line that read, Property lease, October. I stared at it for a long moment before archiving the receipt. Efficiency, compliance, predictability. The same standards he had worshipped his entire life. Now he lived under them. Blackwood Partners officially collapsed 2 weeks after that boardroom meeting. Regulators stepped in. Accounts were frozen. The founders quietly negotiated settlements to avoid prison. Because I controlled the senior debt, my firm recovered first. Clean exit. Profit margin, 38%. Julian, of course, tried to spin the story. On social media, he posted vague quotes about learning experiences and toxic partnerships. He told distant relatives he had walked away from a deal that didn't align with his vision. But lies are expensive to maintain. Truth is cheap. Within a month, creditors began circling him. Credit cards maxed, car repossessed, condo in foreclosure. The friends who once drank on his tab stopped answering calls. He showed up at the house one evening while I was there reviewing renovation bids. He looked smaller, puffy-eyed. Same designer jacket, now worn like a costume from a life that didn't exist anymore. You enjoying this? He asked, voice hoarse. I didn't look up from the paperwork. Define this. Watching me lose everything. I set the folder down calmly. Julian, you never had those things. You had borrowed versions funded by other people's sacrifice. He clenched his jaw. You could help me. I already did, I said. You're not in prison. He flinched like I'd slapped him. You think you're better than us now? No, I replied evenly. I just stopped pretending you were better than me. He had no comeback for that. Just silence. Then quietly, Dad doesn't sleep much. That's what happens when reality collects overdue payments, I said. He left without another word. I didn't stop him. 6 months later, the dynamic had fully reversed. Arthur paid rent early now, every month, sometimes with an extra note in the memo line, thank you asterisk. He never said it out loud. But he maintained the lawn himself now, fixed things without hearing contractors, cooked at home, sold the country club membership. For the first time in his life, he lived within limits. Structure had done what love never could. My mother stopped calling me unlucky. She called before repairs, asked permission before changes. Her voice had lost its edge, not warm but careful. Respect born from consequence is still respect. As for me, the house appreciated 11% after renovations. Stable asset, reliable tenants, low emotional exposure. A perfect investment. One evening, I stood in what used to be my childhood bedroom, now converted into a minimalist office overlooking the street. The same walls that once heard arguments about tuition and wasted potential now held framed degrees, deal maps, and growth charts. I opened my laptop and reviewed my portfolio. Distressed retail chain, restructured profitable. Commercial real estate debt, converted to equity. Blackwood Fallout Fund, closed, gains distributed. I had built an empire from things other people abandoned, including myself. My phone buzzed with a calendar reminder. Quarterly family lease review asterisk asterisk. I almost laughed. Family. Such a sentimental word for a contractual relationship. Still, I walked downstairs. Arthur was at the kitchen table with the lease folder already open, glasses low on his nose. Payment will clear tomorrow, he said quietly. I know, I replied. A pause lingered. Then, without looking up, he said, you were right. Not loud, not dramatic. Just accounted for. I nodded once. I usually am when I do the math. And for the first time, he didn't argue. Because numbers don't care about ego. They only care about truth. That night, I stepped outside onto the porch, my porch, and looked at the house glowing softly under the streetlights. The same house where I was once told I was a burden. Now it generated passive income. Funny how perspective changes when ownership changes. I didn't feel revenge. I didn't feel anger. I felt balance. Justice isn't loud. It's precise. It doesn't scream. It closes. And when it does, the silence that follows isn't emptiness. It's peace. The invisible girl from the corner didn't disappear. She learned. She calculated. She waited. And when the moment came, she didn't beg to be seen. She made herself unavoidable. Like this story, make sure you like and subscribe for more powerful stories of justice, smart comebacks, and unstoppable transformations.